Okay. Hi, Sherry. How are you?
Hi, Doug. I'm doing well. I hope you are.
Oh, I'm doing just fine. Thank you. Thank you for coming
Good.
on the show. Where are you? Where are you calling from?
I am in the mountains of North Carolina. Heaven on earth.
That's a very beautiful area. I've driven through there. I've driven through the Shenandoah Valley, through Virginia and West Virginia. Beautiful country. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, you are an author. You've got two books. I saw one, Rude Awakening was one book, right?
Right. And I'm working on my second book now, which is a memoir.
A memoir. Okay. Does it have a title?
Yes, it's called Tempered Soul Surviving Trauma, Grief, and Bipolar Disorder.
Oh, all right. But you said you're working on it, so it's not out yet.
No, it's not out yet, but Rude Awakening is now available.
Which one did you want to talk about for the
I
show?
guess I guess let's talk about Rude today.
Okay. Why don't you give us a little synopsis of the book?
Well, I am somewhat of a true crime junkie, and I came across this story that really intrigued me. It was about the attempted murder of a Knoxville businessman and his profoundly disabled daughter. It was just I saw it on two different true crime shows, and it just left me wondering about a lot of different things. So I contacted the victim. He did survive, and told him I thought it might make a good book. He agreed, and 2 days later, I was on a plane out to meet him. Very, very interesting story, and it really caught the national media attention. Even when the O.J. Simpson case started 4 days after this event, he was his wife and her lover attempted to murder him, and as I said, their profoundly disabled child. And the story is quite interesting in terms of the vicious attack on him and all the plotting, calculation, and manipulation that preceded that murder attempt. And as I said, it caught, immense media attention. The day after it happened, the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, AP, People Magazine, all types of national media showed up in Knoxville to try and interview anyone that would talk to them about the case. It also um, was it made Tennessee judicial history when, for the first time, cameras were allowed in the courtroom, and court TV showed up and with its pundits and consultants and covered the case from gavel to gavel. Very interesting case, as I mentioned. His name is Rob Wedby. He thought he was happily married to his wife Lisa and had two children, a young son and a daughter who had severe disabilities. She had a very rare disease called moya moya, which shuts down the blood vessels in the brain. And at 30, she is still alive and requires 24/7 care. His wife wanted no part of that child. She continually asked Rob to put her in a facility. And Rob said, over my dead body, and I guess she took that to heart. So, and she was very, like I said, she was very, very attractive, had a very sweet demeanor, but she was a narcissistic sociopath, and it became involved with the church organist who had been in love with her for 10 years. She knew that, and she used that to convince him that her husband needed to be murdered. And so they failed, fortunately. And, as I said, the media just descended, wanting more about the story. It's sort of unusual because you hear about the gory murders and serial murders and things like that. But for some reason, this story really captured people's curiosity. It's been featured on numerous true crime shows, including Primetime Live, Investigation Discovery. Most recently, it was featured on Investigation Discovery's American Monster.
You said that this was going on right at the time the O.J. Simpson trial was starting, so mid 90s, 94, somewhere in there?
Yeah, it took place in June of 1984, and oh my gosh, tomorrow will be the anniversary of it. Well, 4 days later, Nicole Simpson and Ron Goldman were murdered.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, but that didn't seem to quell any of the media interest. People magazine covered it, and as I mentioned, New York Times, Washington Post, Los Angeles Times. It made headlines, and it also had some international coverage because there was interest from, I believe, Switzerland, England, Scotland, New Zealand, and Australia. So
She tried to kill her husband and the daughter.
that's correct.
How did she try to do it and failed?
She had manipulated this. He was this wiry, very unattractive man that she had about a year affair with. And during that time, she convinced him that Rob was abusing her and the children. The stories were just so unbelievable, so exaggerated. And the one thing we always questioned is if she was abused so bad and showed such horrible signs of abuse, where were the pictures? And there are medical reports that it never showed any sign of abuse. And anyway, so after manipulating and conditioning this man that was totally in love with her, they came up with a plan. He snuck into their house one evening, armed, with gloves, and she provided him with quite a large knife. And he hid in this closet and it was a small, cramped closet. He hid in there for 6 hours, wearing the gloves and holding the knife. When Rob arrived home from work, and they were, she had been pursuing a divorce, but that night when he got home, she was dressed in a very, lacy nightie, and, gave him all the indications of, why don't we go upstairs? And so that happened. Of course, they made love. Rob thought, well, maybe there is a chance for this marriage. After Rob was asleep, Lisa, his wife, went down and got Michael Frazier out of the closet. She brought him up the stairs and led him to the bedroom. And she left. So Michael crept into the room and was standing over Rob. The blinds in the room, which were usually closed at night, were open. Michael hit the bed, and Rob woke up just in time to see the knife descending on him and was able to deflect it. So it lacerated, it almost cut off his ear and lacerated his throat. And, he was immediately he was in the fight for his life. And he kept screaming, Lisa, turn the light on, call the police. And she never responded. And the struggle, continued between this silhouette. I mean, he was dressed completely in black. He had a stocking over his head. The only interesting thing, he was an organist, and he had on a Phantom of the Opera shirt, which we always thought was sort of a statement. He considered himself to be a genius and, world-class musician. But so anyway, he continues. There's a struggle for the knife. Rob was repeatedly cut, but he still was struggling. He continued to call for his wife and had an immense sense of relief when she showed up at the door with a baseball bat. And he thought, oh, thank God. But about a moment later, he was in shock when the man that was attacking him said to Lisa, do it now. You've got to do it now. And in that instant, Rob immediately knew she hadn't come to help him. So I guess the adrenaline, Rob was able to clutch the man and throw him into the corner. He jumped up, covered in blood, ran out the room, and as he went by Lisa, he grabbed the bat and, tore down the hall to try and get outside. In the meantime, he can hear pictures falling off the wall, and, obviously it was, the would-be assassin in pursuit.
Right.
So, and as far as the child went, she was supposed to spend the night, her brother and Brittany was her name, were supposed to spend the night with the grandparents, but Lisa was absolutely adamant that Brittany come home that night. And they later found Valium that she was given in very small amounts to control her screaming and seizures. And they found that bottle empty. And they had a very difficult time reviving her. So they both survived. There became a fight when the assailant did catch up with Rob. Rob was ready for him. He had that baseball bat, and he was ready to bash his head in. Unfortunately, his hands were so slick with blood that the baseball bat slipped. However, the assailant immediately turned and ran back through the house. And at some point, we know he escaped through the back and took off. And Rob was he got the baseball bat, started beating on his gutters and screaming for his next door neighbor. So that they were able to, get the cops there, and, they began to search for Michael Frazier, the would-be assassin.
Wow, that's an amazing story. We are just about out of time, but I wanted to ask you, so the daughter was not injured at all, right?
Other than the fact that she had an overdose of Valium.
Well, okay, they drugged her, but she wasn't cut with the knife, or she wasn't...
No,
okay.
She had not been attacked with that. One other interesting thing before we go, in addition to the vicious attack on his life, Rob was also vilified in court. That's one reason I wanted to write this book, because Rob and his family never really had a voice. As I said, he was vilified in court. The Michael Frazier got off involuntary attempted manslaughter and served 4 years. His wife served 1 year after taking an Alford plea. So I felt like he never received justice, and that was a big motivator for me to write this book, to give this family a voice.
Why was he vilified? What did he do wrong? Was he not liked in the community, or?
No, he was highly respected in the community because of all the tales that Lisa had told
Oh, so okay.
about, I mean, she told things like he would throw the kids into the wall. I mean, if you threw a 4-year-old severely disabled child against a wall, the chances of her surviving are slim. But those were the kind of things that, she told. And I think the jury, in the Michael Frazier trial, I think so much time was spent talking about what Lisa did. I think that the jury felt that she was the one to blame and therefore gave the lighter
Right.
sentence to
So people
Michael Frazier.
people believed her stories about him abusing the children and her and all of that. Yeah.
Yes, some
Yeah.
people did. Yeah.
Okay. Sherry, we do have to wrap this up. We are out of time. Do you have a website that you want to give out for your
Yes.
book?
The book is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Google Play, and iTunes. You can follow the book on www.rob, no, excuse me, rude awakening rob wedby.com, and that keeps you up to date on book signings. Of course, our book signings have been, during the
Yeah,
COVID, but
COVID. Yeah.
that's information where people can find out more about the book and the story.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for coming on. That story was riveting, and it makes me want to go buy the book. Actually.
Well, I will
Yeah.
be happy to send you a copy.
Okay,
And
great.
Doug, thank you so much for having me and giving me a chance to tell